There comes a moment when love stops feeling like home and starts feeling like survival. When you've given everything, your patience, your explanations, your forgiveness, and still end up feeling unseen. That's when walking away becomes less about ending something and more about saving yourself. It's not about hurting him or proving a point. It's about healing the parts of you that kept choosing pain disguised as love. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to fight harder, it's to finally walk away with peace. Walking away isn't an act of cruelty, it's an act of clarity. It's the moment your heart finally catches up to the truth your mind has been whispering for far too long, that staying is breaking you more than leaving ever could. For a while, you convince yourself that if you just love harder, communicate better, or stay a little longer, things will change. You tell yourself that love means endurance, that patience will be rewarded, but love without peace turns into survival. And survival isn't what love is meant to feel like. Walking away isn't coldness. It's the realization that the person you've been fighting for isn't fighting beside you anymore. At first, it feels cruel to take a step back from someone you care about, to choose distance when your heart still aches for closeness. But clarity often disguises itself as pain before it becomes peace. The truth hurts before it heals. And the truth here is that staying out of fear, guilt, or hope that things will magically change keeps you trapped in a cycle that slowly erodes your self-worth. You start to shrink yourself to fit what's left of the relationship. You start to silence your needs to avoid conflict. You start mistaking chaos for passion and inconsistency for depth. Walking away, then, becomes the moment you reclaim your sense of direction, the moment you say, "I love you, but I love me too." When you walk away with clarity, you're not abandoning love, you're honoring reality. You're choosing to see things as they are, not as you wish they could be. That's what clarity really is, seeing clearly, even when it hurts, because deep down you know love isn't supposed to make you doubt yourself. It's not supposed to make you question your worth or feel like you're the only one trying to keep the connection alive. Walking away becomes the act of finally aligning your actions with your truth. It's saying, "I deserve more than almost. I deserve more than sometimes. I deserve more than one-sided love." And though the world might not see it this way, walking away isn't a sign of weakness, it's a reflection of strength. Weakness is staying in what's slowly destroying you, because you're afraid to face what comes next. Strength is stepping into the unknown, knowing it might hurt, but trusting that it's the only way to heal. There's a quiet courage in letting go, a bravery that no one else can measure but you, because you're not just leaving a person, you're leaving behind an emotional pattern that no longer serves you. You're leaving behind the part of you that believed pain was the price for love. It's natural to worry that walking away might hurt him, but healing can't come from staying small to protect someone else's comfort. You're not meant to carry the emotional weight of two people. You're not meant to keep fixing something that only you are committed to repairing. Walking away is not revenge, it's release. It's saying, "I refuse to lose myself to keep someone else." That's not cruelty, that's clarity in its purest form. And one day you'll look back and realize that walking away didn't break you, it freed you. It made space for the person you were always meant to become, the one who no longer needs someone else's approval to feel whole. You'll realize that the pain of letting go was just the price of peace, and that peace was worth everything, because when you walk away not to punish, but to protect your soul, you're not being heartless, you're being honest. And that kind of honesty is what real healing begins with. When you walk away, you're not just leaving him, you're returning to yourself. Somewhere along the way, you began to lose pieces of who you were. You started to think more about how to keep him happy than about what made you happy. You stopped listening to your own needs, your own voice, your own intuition, because you were too busy trying to maintain the connection. You convinced yourself that love meant putting him first, even when it meant putting yourself last. But walking away is the moment you realize you've spent too long trying to be chosen by someone who never saw your full worth. It's the moment you decide to choose yourself instead. Returning to yourself doesn't happen all at once. At first, it feels like emptiness. You miss the routine, the messages, the comfort of having someone to think about. But as time passes, that emptiness begins to fill with something far more meaningful: peace. The silence that once felt unbearable becomes a sanctuary. You start to breathe again, deeply, without the heaviness of constant uncertainty. You begin to remember who you were before the overthinking, before the emotional exhaustion, before the constant trying. That's the beauty of walking away. It doesn't just remove you from the pain, it brings you back home to yourself. It's easy to forget how much of yourself you gave away until you're gone. You gave him your time, your energy, your emotional labor, your empathy. You taught him what real love looks like, but you also forgot that love isn't meant to cost you your identity. You're supposed to grow within love, not shrink inside it. And when you realize that staying means losing yourself a little more each day, you understand that leaving isn't betrayal, it's recovery. It's you saying, I can't keep abandoning myself for someone who never shows up fully for me. That's not selfishness. That's self-respect in motion. Walking away teaches you something powerful about self-worth. You start to see that you don't need someone to complete you. You need someone who complements you. You begin to value peace over potential, consistency over intensity, truth over promises. You learn that you don't have to chase love, you only have to stop running from yourself. Every boundary you set, every time you say no more, you're not rejecting him, you're protecting yourself. You're building a life that doesn't depend on someone else's presence to feel meaningful. And here's what's beautiful. Once you start returning to yourself, you realize how much power you actually have. The same strength that kept you trying to fix things can now be used to rebuild your own life. The same love you kept giving away can now be poured back into your healing, your growth, your dreams. You realize that you were never unworthy, you were just misdirecting your energy. You were investing in someone who didn't know what to do with a heart like yours. When you walk away, you reclaim your emotional real estate. You take back the space in your mind that was occupied by overthinking. You take back the time that was lost waiting for change. You take back the love that was given without being valued. And in doing so, you begin to rebuild from a place of self-trust. You learn to listen to your instincts again, to honor your emotions, to protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. The real healing begins not when you stop loving him, but when you start loving you more. You'll realize that walking away wasn't about losing him, it was about finding yourself again. The version of you that laughs freely, sleeps peacefully, and dreams boldly. That version of you deserves a love that feels safe, steady, and mutual. And sometimes, the only way to find that love is to first walk away from the one that taught you what you don't deserve. You've spent so much time protecting his feelings that you forgot about your own. You softened your words so he wouldn't feel attacked. You stayed quiet when something hurt you because you didn't want to push him away. You forgave things that broke your heart because you were afraid of losing him. You made excuses for his behavior, carried the emotional weight of the relationship, and convinced yourself that maybe you were just a little more patient, a little more understanding, he would finally change. But what you didn't realize was that while you were busy protecting his comfort, you were sacrificing your own peace. You were breaking yourself to keep him whole. Walking away isn't about making him hurt. It's about finally understanding that his emotions are not your responsibility. You're not here to fix him, to save him, or to make his journey easier. You can love someone deeply and still know that it's not your job to manage their growth or soothe their insecurities at the expense of your own sanity. For too long, you've mistaken love for caretaking. You believed that being the understanding one was noble, that enduring pain quietly was strength. But true strength isn't in how much you can tolerate, it's in knowing when enough is enough. You have to understand that emotional responsibility isn't the same as emotional connection. You can care for someone without carrying their burdens. You can love someone without letting their behavior dictate your peace. The moment you realize that his discomfort doesn't have to become your chaos, you begin to take back your power. Because the truth is, you were never meant to be his emotional safety net. You were meant to be his partner, not his healer. When you keep prioritizing his comfort over your own boundaries, you teach him that it's okay to take without giving back. You teach him that your needs can always come second. And when he starts believing that, the dynamic shifts. You become the giver, the fixer, the one who bends, while he becomes the one who takes, assumes, and expects. But love shouldn't drain you. It should expand you. If the relationship constantly leaves you anxious, uncertain, or emotionally depleted, that's not love, that's imbalance. Walking away is the moment you finally draw the line between compassion and self-neglect. It's when you say, I can love you and still choose me. That doesn't make you cruel. It makes you conscious. It means you've stopped confusing pain with purpose. It means you've realized that protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's survival. And yes, walking away might hurt him, but that's not your burden to carry, because the alternative is you continuing to hurt yourself, quietly, endlessly, to keep him comfortable. Healing begins when you allow yourself to stop managing other people's emotions, when you understand that his lessons are his to learn. Maybe your absence will teach him what your presence never could, that love doesn't mean unlimited chances. Maybe it will force him to confront himself without the cushion of your forgiveness. But even if it doesn't, that's not your concern anymore. You're not walking away to make him see your worth. You're walking away because you've finally remembered it. There's freedom in that realization, the freedom of no longer being responsible for how someone else feels. You start to notice how much lighter life becomes when you're not constantly trying to regulate someone else's moods or reactions. You begin to reclaim your own emotional rhythm. You start to feel grounded again, because your peace was never supposed to depend on someone else's behavior. And when you truly accept that, you'll understand that walking away was never about hurting him. It was about healing the part of you that kept believing you had to carry both hearts for the relationship to survive. Love doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for both of you is to let go. It's one of the hardest truths to accept, because we're taught that real love endures, that it fights through everything, that if you just hold on long enough, things will fall back into place. But what happens when holding on starts to hurt more than it heals? When you find yourself exhausted, constantly trying to revive something that no longer breathes life into you? That's when you realize that love isn't supposed to feel like survival. It's supposed to feel like peace. Walking away doesn't mean you've stopped caring. It doesn't mean the love has disappeared or that your feelings were never real. It simply means that you've reached the point where staying would mean betraying yourself. You can still love someone deeply and know that they're not good for your growth. You can still wish them well while recognizing that your paths no longer align. That kind of clarity takes courage, because it's much easier to stay in what's familiar than to face the unknown of letting go. But love that constantly hurts isn't love that's meant to last. It's attachment, and attachment often disguises itself as devotion. True love should never make you abandon your sense of self. It should never make you silence your needs, suppress your emotions, or settle for less than mutual effort. And yet, when you care for someone, it's tempting to believe that your patience will be rewarded, that your sacrifices will somehow inspire them to change. But change doesn't happen through suffering, it happens through choice. You can't teach someone to love you the way you deserve by accepting less than that love. Sometimes, the most powerful message you can send is silence, the absence of your energy, the space that reveals the void your presence once filled. Letting go is not an act of weakness, it's an act of self-respect. It's standing in your truth and saying, I can't keep giving all of me to someone who meets me halfway. It's understanding that staying out of guilt or fear isn't loyalty. It's self-abandonment. Real loyalty includes being loyal to yourself first. Because love without boundaries will always turn into pain, and a relationship without mutual growth will eventually suffocate one person while enabling the other to remain unchanged. When you walk away, you're not erasing the love story. You're just rewriting its ending in a way that honors your growth. Maybe the love was real, maybe it mattered, but not all love is meant to last forever. Some love stories are meant to teach, to awaken, to break you open just enough to remind you of your worth. The ending doesn't make it meaningless, it makes it complete. Healing begins when you accept that walking away isn't failure, it's alignment. You're not quitting, you're choosing yourself in a place where love stopped choosing you. You'll know you've made the right decision when peace starts to replace the ache. When your heart begins to feel lighter, when you wake up one morning and realize that you no longer feel the need to explain why you left. Because the truth will have already set in. You didn't walk away out of bitterness, but out of love for yourself. You reached a point where staying would have meant losing your light, and you chose to protect it instead. That's what real love is, sometimes quiet, gentle, and brave enough to let go. You didn't stop loving him, you just stopped sacrificing yourself in the name of love. You chose healing over habit, peace over pain, and that choice will always be one of the most powerful acts of love you can ever make. Healing after walking away isn't about forgetting him, it's about remembering yourself. It's about coming home to the version of you that existed before the heartbreak, before you started carrying the weight of someone else's inconsistency, before your worth became tied to how much you were loved by another person. Healing isn't instant, it's not linear. Some days you'll feel free, and others you'll feel like you're right back at the beginning, missing him, questioning your decision, replaying the good memories. But those moments don't mean you made a mistake, they mean you're human. They mean your heart is processing what your mind already knows, that letting go was necessary. When you walk away from someone you love, you're not just leaving a person, you're leaving a pattern. A cycle of emotional highs and lows that once made you feel alive, but also left you drained. You're detaching from the hope that one more conversation, one more chance, one more act of love could fix what was broken. Healing begins when you stop chasing closure from them and start creating peace within yourself. It's realizing that the closure you seek will never come in the form of a perfect explanation or apology. It comes when you stop needing answers and start accepting reality for what it is. Healing asks you to be patient with yourself. You spent so much time pouring energy into someone else, now it's time to pour that same energy into you. It's time to rediscover what makes you feel alive, what makes you laugh, what brings you joy outside of them. It's about rebuilding your life, piece by piece, until it starts to feel like yours again. Some of those pieces will be new friends, new dreams, new boundaries, and others will be parts of you that you'd forgotten, now ready to return. The more you reconnect with your own heart, the less you'll feel the emptiness their absence once created. Healing also means forgiving yourself for staying too long, for trying too hard, for believing love alone was enough. You did what you knew with the heart you had. You loved as best as you could, and that's something to be proud of, not ashamed of. Every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of confusion was part of your awakening. You had to lose yourself to learn what self-love truly means. Because real healing isn't about wishing the past didn't happen. It's about understanding why it had to. As you heal, you'll start to notice subtle shifts. The moments that used to break you will begin to strengthen you. The songs, the places, the memories that once brought pain will start to lose their power. You'll begin to see him not as the one who got away, but as the one who taught you what not to settle for again. And when that realization sinks in, something beautiful happens. You stop craving his presence, and you start craving your own peace. You start falling in love with the quiet, the stillness, the freedom of not needing anyone to validate your worth. Eventually, you'll look back and realize that walking away wasn't just an ending. It was the beginning of your rebirth. You'll understand that healing isn't about erasing love, but transforming it. The love you once gave him returns to you, stronger, purer, wiser. You become the safe place you were always searching for in someone else. That's the power of healing, not that you forget, but that you remember your strength. You'll know you've healed when you can think of him and no longer feel pain, only gratitude. Gratitude that you were brave enough to let go, strong enough to rebuild, and wise enough to choose yourself. Peace is the quietest yet most powerful form of strength you will ever have. It doesn't shout, it doesn't prove, it doesn't chase, it simply stands still in its truth. When you finally walk away not to hurt him, but to heal yourself, that's when you discover what true peace feels like. For so long, your emotions were dictated by his actions. If he called, you felt happy. If he pulled away, you felt anxious. Your sense of worth was tied to how much attention he gave you. But peace begins when you detach your happiness from his behavior and reclaim it as your own. That's when the dynamic changes. That's when he feels the shift, not through anger, not through silence meant to punish, but through the calm of someone who no longer needs validation. It's almost ironic. What once made him feel powerful was your emotional reaction. He knew your buttons and he knew how much you cared. But when you stop reacting, when you no longer play the game, he starts to feel the emptiness of his own actions. Because what fed his ego wasn't love, it was control. And when that control is gone, he's left with the silence of his own choices. You, on the other hand, start to feel lighter. You realize that peace doesn't come from fixing someone. It comes from refusing to lose yourself trying to. That's the moment you stop living in emotional chaos and start living with intentional calm. Choosing peace doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It means you stop letting pain make your decisions for you. It's not the absence of emotion, it's the presence of self-awareness. Peace allows you to see the situation for what it is, not what you wished it could be. You stop replaying old conversations in your head, trying to decode what went wrong, because you finally understand that closure isn't found in words, it's found in acceptance. You accept that you did your best, you accept that he couldn't meet you there, you accept that love shouldn't have felt like a war zone. And in that acceptance, peace quietly enters. There's something deeply magnetic about a woman at peace. Not because she's cold or detached, but because she's centered. She's no longer trying to prove her worth to anyone. She doesn't chase love, she attracts it through her calm confidence. She knows she can love deeply without losing herself. That kind of energy is rare, and it commands respect. It's the kind of peace that makes people stop and take notice, not because you've changed for them, but because you've finally changed for yourself. And when he sees that peace in you, he feels something he never expected, regret, because peace has a way of highlighting chaos. When you become calm, he starts to see how messy he's been. When you become stable, he starts to feel his own imbalance. But your peace isn't meant to make him feel anything. It's meant to free you. It's the soft, powerful declaration that your healing matters more than your history, that your future deserves more than your past mistakes, and that you no longer need to fight for love that doesn't fight for you. Peace is the final stage of healing, not because everything is perfect, but because you no longer need it to be. You can look back on what hurt you and smile, not because it didn't matter, but because you grew stronger because of it. You can think of him without anger, without longing, without pain, just peace. That's when you'll know you've truly walked away for the right reason. Not to prove your strength, but to protect your soul. Not to make him regret losing you, but to honor the peace you fought so hard to find. In the end, walking away isn't an act of revenge. It's an act of self-respect. It's choosing peace over pain, clarity over confusion, and healing over history. You're not walking away to show him what he's lost. You're walking away to remember what you deserve. Because when you stop fighting to be understood by someone who never truly saw you, you finally create space to understand yourself. And that's where real power begins, not in making him regret losing you, but in finally feeling free without him.